All right. Hey guys. I don't know how well this is going to work. My goal was to go out and set up in some of the beautiful scenery that surrounds me right now in fall where we live. And so what ended up happening was got the camera all set up. Everything's looking beautiful. The shot's in frame and focus. Everything's good to go. Well, it turns out at some point in the bag, my camera, the on button got switched and it proceeded to drive the entire battery down. So instead of the beautiful, great outdoors, I am relegated to talking to you in my car right now. But I was just had a few things. I wanted this one to be kind of a quick one, regardless. I was thinking recently, I've been thinking recently a lot about Newman and his illative sense. And yesterday, I took my son to a event over at the library, and it was a mother and a son team. They run a rescue and rehabilitation center for wild animals. And as the son is presenting his talk about the work that they do, he's telling the story of his mother. His mother's sitting there. She's a little bit she's hitting up in the age, and she's probably, I don't know, in her 60s, maybe in her 70s. She's getting to the point where it's like closer to retirement for her. But the son is telling this lady's story. And, as he's doing so, she's starting to like handle, they've got a few of the ambassador animals that they have there with them. And I didn't know what to expect from this event. I thought it was just going to be like a park ranger kind of thing that comes out and shows the kids like a snake or two or something like that. But the son is like telling this mother's story. And I started to get the sense that this is really an incredible woman. And, she's handling these animals. They've got a porcupine. They've got a skunk there, a desacked skunk. So it's not like going to spray the kids or the library. But anyways, I'm watching her, and her intuition with these animals just really got me thinking. I'm sort of starting to connect it to the idea of Newman and his illative sense, because one of the things that I plan to do, I just recently finished this book on enculturation. I've got a few people that are reviewing that for me. Who knows when I'll ever get it out to being published. The other book that I have planned that I'm like in the process of working on is a book on Lakota Catholicism. But beyond that, I've been ruminating on my mind about certainty and certitude and faith and how do we come to know things. And as I'm watching this lady with these animals, and I'm thinking about like, wow, how could this woman ever pass on this wisdom, truly in the truest sense of the word wisdom, that she has to someone else? And it really just dawned on me that this is not the kind of thing. I mean, you really get the sense, like listening to her son rather speak, that he does not have the touch that she has. And I think she's a good illustration of what Newman gets at with his illative sense. Certitude, per St. John Henry Newman, for those of you that don't know, for him it's this combination of probabilities that come together in a substantial mind. This mind here, and it terminates in a certainty of types. This woman, for example, knew, right? Like she knew these animals in a real sense, in a real time sense, not in a psychological sense. She's not thinking about how she knows these animals, but she knows, for example, that this skunk who she's telling us was jitterish and may otherwise bite somebody is not going to bite her. And there's really just something, when you see, I told my son, like, it was really special for him to get to meet this woman and see this woman, because we don't see many people left like this anymore, at least not in the first world countries that we're accustomed to. But there is something that seems to be at play within the natural world, and occasionally you meet these people that are able to tap into it. And it's something that I don't think that the European scientific mind with our method as fantastic as the method is, right, and as wonderful as a job as what it does, it's something that the scientific method will never be able to touch upon, because what does the scientific method do? It seeks to isolate, and from this isolation, it seeks to extrapolate. This is why we have controls when you are involved in undergoing the method. You have a hypothesis, you observe, you have controls over that you can compare to your observations to the what is it? I'm trying to regain my scientific terminology here. The applications that you are applying to the object that you are observing, and comparing that to the controls that you have on standby. But you can't isolate this woman's sense that she had with this animal in real time. It's all of her years of her life. This life brought into this moment with this animal, and combined with all of her senses, right? All of the five senses that we use to extract the sensible species for the intellect to act upon. But there's also a volitional element to this moment as well, a volitional moment, if you will, where her acting with the animal, you may sit down, I may sit down with this same skunk that she's holding, and let's just like thought experiment here, right? Like pretend you're able to take the exact same skunk, and in a simultaneous moment, you're holding the skunk and she's holding the skunk. I know that's not possible, but just imagine, right? You may do all of the things that she does. Your brain may even compute all of the information that she is computing, but the animal ends up biting you and not her. And this is where I think the scientific method, where skeptical epistemology, all of these things that we in the West are somewhat obsessed with, really fail to realize when we are engaging with concrete reality. This is why the Europeans were, I'm doing a lot of research right now on the Lakota Indians. And across the board, many Europeans were just astonished at some of the things that the indigenous people were just able to do. Like, I'm reading these priests who talk about these like young boys who for the first time ever hop on a wild horse, and they're able to tame the horse. Or even if it is a tamed horse, they're able to just hop on the horse for the first time ever, and they take off at full gallop. The kind of thing that it would take most of us like months of practice to be able to master, to get a horse to go at gallop. These young Indian boys just do, like it's nothing, like it's like intuitive within them, and they don't think about it. They're not psychologizing over it. This is why they were so good. This is why the Indians, you hear about this. Sometimes if you see it in the old movies, you'll catch it. I feel like we've kind of lost it in the modern world when everybody's too like politically correct to bring up certain stereotypes. But the stereotype was a true stereotype in the sense that it was a skill that the natives had that the European or didn't have, where the Indians were famous for being able to tracking animals, for scouting in areas that they had never been to before. This is why it was not uncommon for European explorers to have an Indian scout to guide them, to lead them along the way, because they were able to see things. And this is not the kind of thing, you couldn't just sit down and have the Indian write out a textbook for you of how to go out into the woods and scout or track an animal. It's all of these things that it's his life experiences, and it's all of the information that he has accumulated, the wisdom from his grandfathers, from the experience that he had on that hunt with his grandfather as a young boy, to just his own experiences, his own time spent involved in these things. So I'm thinking about this like in my own past recently. I could think of like 3 areas where I have tapped into that in my own way. And the one area that I had tapped into it was through the music that I used to play. And I had my best friend, and I would play music for hours and hours and hours. And I wish he was here to attest to this, but there was times where he and I were playing music. We were both guitar players, but it was a process of like coming to learn the way that he played, he learning the way that I played, listening to each other and improvising. And it was this communicative process that was happening in real time in the moment where we would almost like, I hate to use such a esoteric and vague word as mind reading, but it was almost like I knew him well enough to know where he was going with an idea. And he knew where I would go with an idea. And it was the only kind of thing that you would have to spend years, like hours and hours. We'd spend countless hours playing music to be able to get to where you could have that kind of conversational thing. But it was not, it was extra mental. It was before we wouldn't think. And as a matter of fact, if you stop to think about it, if I would sit and think, oh, I think I know where Lewis is going right now with this phrase that he's playing, I would lose it. You hear surfers talk about this, right? Like when they go to ride the wave. I think in many ways it's an example, it's an experiential example of what the illative sense of Newman is getting at, where the ability to ride a wave is not just a series of propositions that you assent to. It's this cumulative process wherein the surfer has had so much experience with the waves that at this particular moment, with this board, with this surfer, with his mind, with his experience, he knows what to do with this wave. And he reacts in the moment. The last one that I was thinking of, well, no, there's another one too. So another way that I've experienced this before in the past is with playing billiards. I'm not going to linger on this, but in my past life, my cousin, he had a pool table, and we would spend hours and hours and hours playing pool. And it was the same sense, and was in many ways of like playing music, where I ended up with just a feel, with a sense for playing pool that I couldn't express, right? Like I could take a shot. Me and my cousin would kind of challenge each other, and I got really good at doing bank shots. He got really good at doing them too, but I could like feel a bank shot, and it's the only way that I can express it. Like I could feel the shot in the moment, in the position that I was standing. And I tried this with other people. I tried to explain to them, okay, you're standing here, like trying to teach how to do this. It's not just a matter of where you're standing and you hit, well, I mean, it is. There's a sense in which it is like how you're standing and, okay, stand here and hit it at this angle from this degree. But I couldn't express it to people. Like it was something where I would get into the zone. And when I tapped into it, there would be times where like my cousin and I, like we would play these games and people would hate to play us because we wouldn't give them a chance to take a shot. We could just run the table and the game would be over before they ever had a chance to take a shot. Another example of this that I was thinking about was, and this draws me back to thinking about this woman, is the only real animal that I can say I have anything of a sense like that, like what she had, is with dogs. I can't do it with horses. I've tried once to read horses. I don't know how to read horses, but I can read dogs. I've had dogs my entire life. And, my wife and I, we both love dogs, but she will tell you she is unable to assess a dog. She'll actually turn to me and say, what is this dog like? Is this dog friendly? Is this dog not friendly? And the only way that I can express what it's like is the years of my being around dogs. All of those experiences, that knowledge in the moment, like I can know with a high degree of certainty that this dog here in this moment is acting friendly. This one over here isn't. I can't teach it to you. I can't say I can necessarily articulate it. I could show you signs to look for. I could give you a checklist, but you still may get bit. That's all that I could tell you about it. And I'm thinking of this woman, this life that she's lived, and how we will never be able to extract the kind of certitude from mere extrapolation of facts and data. Because there's another moment, another perception, I believe, that takes place. The mystics acquire it, by grace, by the aesthetic practices of detachment and fasting and prayer and all of these things that they engage in. This is why St. Francis, he most certainly had it, right? Like he was able to commune with animals and nature in a way that many of us are quite envious of. But we may never be able to fully put into words what that experience is. And I think Newman really does get close to it with his illative sense. And I'm hoping that one day, when I put this book together, I can sort of help, as I'm thinking through these things right now, and I'll be writing my own sort of synthesis on it, on knowledge, on the judgment, the judicatio, as Bonaventure calls it, the illative sense, on understanding, on certainty. And I'm thinking, like, while we may never be able to express in words, we can at least express the overall concept of it. And it's kind of a hard concept to get at, to touch upon. But I think this lady yesterday was just a prime example of it. And I wish that we had more people like this that we could experience. Because Newman, actually, when he talks about the illative sense, one of the like sort of famous examples that he gives is of the peasant and the weather, where the peasant can walk out, a peasant farmer could walk out into the world and tell you what the weather that day is going to be, because of all of these like sort of complicated processes that can take place at one time. And it's just like, yeah, it's just like, it's a wonderful reflection. So part of me that's sad, I would not bring it up to this lady, but it's like, gosh, when you could see her son's a very, very sweet guy, very passionate about what he does, but he doesn't have that sense, that touch that his mother has. And when she's gone, it's kind of gone with her. And I guess that would be maybe the next step, is how do we like pass that on to our children? And I guess the first thing that we have to do is to get back out there and start experiencing these things firsthand, because that's a huge part of the process of how we come to certainty, is through the process of experience. But I think we get too caught up sometimes in the epistemological justifications for certitude